Hey, everybody. Welcome to another great interview for our business summit. Today, we're talking to Robert Donnelly from drbusiness.com. And we're going to be talking all about the business plan, which is one of the integral things that you need when you're creating your company. A lot of people don't plan anything or build any plans. So we're going to be talking about what does it involve, what's in it, why is it important. So, Robert, without any further ado, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and a little bit about just an intro to business plans, because we'll go in depth, but just a brief intro to it.
So a business plan is a story about your business. So it's sort of like a book about your business. And basically what I think you want to explain is, what are we doing now? We need to have an executive summary. Talks a little bit about our business, where are we now and what's happening in our marketplace. Then we should have another section called Key Problems and Opportunities, which is basically the problems that you have with some action plans to deal with them and some opportunities that you have that hopefully you can exploit. Then the third section should be your marketing section, or in other words, what are you going to do it with? And in that section, you should have an explanation of all of your products and the markets into which they're sold. Then you should have a fourth section, which is the strategy section. And the strategy section basically should describe whatever strategies you have to make sure that your plan will be a success. So a strategy should be, what is the strategy? Why are you doing the strategy? Or in other words, what's the rationale for the strategy? Who's going to manage the strategy? How long is it going to take, quarter by quarter? How much is it going to cost, quarter by quarter? And then lastly, what is the return on the investment in each one of your strategies? The next section should be your organizational section, or in other words, who's going to do it? And there you should have your organization chart that shows all of your team members and basically, what they're supposed to be doing or their job titles. Then the next section is your financial section. So basically, that's where you should have your financial statements, your profit and loss, your balance sheet, and hopefully some cash flow schedules over the term of the business plan. And then lastly, you should have a section on contingency plans. So in other words, you have your plan that you put together. Then you should have an optimistic plan if things go better than planned, and then you should have a pessimistic plan for things that don't go as well as planned. So I don't think you ever want to be embarrassed by making a presentation of your plan and having someone ask you, well, what are you going to do if you don't make the plan? So that's what I think should be contained in your business plan or in your book about your business.
Awesome. All right. So that really breaks down the different pieces of it. And I think that I want to kind of talk about a couple of those. With the executive summary, it's the first thing. It's the first thing that people are going to see. What are some good things to remember when writing it? What are some good things to do while writing it? And what are things we want to include and things we might not need to include in that executive summary?
Okay, so since we're actually writing a story about our business, we're creating a book basically. So the executive summary, like any good book, should explain what you're doing and why it's exciting and important. So if you take any book, what sells the book is the title, the cover, and the introduction. So basically, the executive summary should be written to entice anybody who's looking at your business plan to want to see more of it, to understand better. So you just need to be able to explain why your plan is so important, somebody will read on. If you can't do that, then they're probably not going to read the rest of your plan.
Okay. Definitely, makes it stand out. And I think that that's a good point to make, because the business plan can be a very long thing and involved thing, especially if it's a bigger business. So when you're going to potential lenders or potential business partners or people that are going to read it, having the executive summary, like you said, be engaging and help me, because that's a lot of times the only thing that those people will read. And if they're not interested, they're going on to the next thing. So,
Bill, if you're not motivated by what you read in the beginning, you're not going to read any further.
absolutely. And that's what we're basically saying with the executive summary, to make sure that it's engaging and gives a clear, concise picture of what people are even getting into. Now that we have the executive summary kind of created and we got an idea of what we need to be making sure that it's engaging and everything, I know we listed off a bunch of different pieces, but what are some really key ones that we need to make sure are, for lack of a better word, together? So I know like the financials are an important part, but like, what are some pieces that, an investor or someone reading the plan would probably jump to?
Well, I would think that anybody who's interested in investing in anybody's business and they are looking at their business plan are obviously going to look at the numbers, but even more important, I think, is the marketing section, or in other words, your description of how you're going to market the segments that you're in and why you have a unique value proposition. And then obviously after that, if they're still interested, they should be taking a look at your strategies, because your strategies are obviously the ways in which you're going to achieve, your overall financial goals and success in marketing.
Absolutely. And it's where they're going to see that potential, like you were saying. So that kind of brings up the next question I have is like, so when you're writing a business plan, where should we start? Because, I've heard different things from different people, but, start with the financials first, or start with the, about the company. Like, what should be like the first thing we start to try to put together when we look at a business plan? Because I've heard different things.
Well, here again, it really depends on how successful or unsuccessful the management team has been. So I've been involved with developing business plans for a long, long time at the corporate level and for even smaller companies. So I think you need a plan for planning, okay?
Yeah, of course.
So what that means is that you need to have either somebody help you with that plan for planning, or you have to think it through before you start. Okay. So in other words, I think what you need to do is to have somebody or get some kind of a book or whatever which describes how to develop a business plan. Because it has to start with the whole team becoming involved. Obviously, you have to spend some time thinking about your strengths, your weaknesses, right? Your opportunities and your threats. So without a plan for planning, I just don't have a good feeling about what's going to happen. All right.
Absolutely. And listing all those things. And that kind of leads into my next question. So when it comes to developing the goal or the focus of the plan, what are some good methods? You had mentioned finding, books to help tell you how to do it. But like when we're trying to create the goal, whether it's a beginning company, so the goal for the company, or if it's one that's maybe active, so it's like the goal for the year, what are good methods for coming up with that goal and getting a focus of the plan so it's not all over the place?
The planning, the business plan for any company is basically the same. Okay. If you're a large company, it's much more complicated. If you're a small company, it's a lot easier. So I've written a book about this. I spent a good portion of my corporate life developing business plans at Pfizer and Exxon. And then I've gone on to develop business plans for a couple of companies that I've actually been the CEO at. And I have been helping other companies for years with this whole business planning process. So again, I think you need, let's say it this way, I think you need something similar to a roadmap for how to develop a business plan.
Okay. And what are some key things that would, all right, so we developed it. We need a roadmap to help create those goals and follow that plan. We need to put the team together and the strategy, like you were saying, and potentially grab information on steps on how to get through the business plan. And when it comes to, I think the last thing I want to kind of ask before we move on is with the goal itself, what are some good ways to pick the one specific goal that we're going to focus on for the company or things like that? Like what are some ways to do that?
Bill, every single company and any company who is successful, you have to figure out and you have to develop what is our unique value proposition. Or in other words, what do we do in the way that we do it gives us a competitive advantage over our competitors in the marketplace. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is that the CEO and the management team really has to get together and they have to start to do a little brainstorming on, what is our vision? What do we want to be? What kind of a company do we want to be? And if you don't get to that point in time where you can determine your unique value proposition and your vision, then I don't think you're going to be successful with the rest of the planning process. Because after that, then you have to develop your mission for getting it done. Or in other words, okay, we've decided what we want to be. Now, how are we going to be it? You know what I mean? You have to start to get together and figure out all those sections of the business plan that I described.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's a good point that like, you should know what your business is getting into, but you should be able to develop it based on a couple of things, from the people that you're trying to reach, from the products you're trying to sell, and really understanding where you fit into all that. Because there are going to be other businesses that do the same thing. So like you said, the value proposition, like what's going to make you different, what's going to make you special, what's going to make you stand out. And understanding that is really going to help you create that goal that we're talking about.
Hey, Bill, if you don't know your unique value proposition, then I don't know how you're going to develop strategies to compete with your competitors. So obviously what you have to do is you have to figure out what's our unique value proposition vis-a-vis the unique value propositions of our competitors. Because the goal is to create the competitive advantage.
Absolutely.
Be able to offer the customer, right, something that's either faster, less expensive, or better, right?
Absolutely. And so that kind of pulls into the next thing. So we've talked about the parts of a business plan. We talked about the some of them that are more key than others. We talked about how to create that eye-catching executive summary. We talked about how to get the goal together and figure out exactly what we're going to be doing as our plan. And one of the things I want to kind of talk about now is, besides the obvious reason of having a plan, for the year or for the business as far as internal operations, what are some other reasons that people will put together a business plan?
Okay. Well, first of all, without a plan, I don't know how the team knows what they're supposed to do to keep the company going, growing, and profitable. So, there's an old management saying that nobody plans to fail, they just fail to plan.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think you'll find that every successful Fortune 500 corporation has a very sophisticated business plan outlining, where are we now? Where do we want to be and by when? And how are we going to get there, quarter by quarter and year by year? And these companies share their plan with their shareholders and their employees and report progress against the plan every quarter.
Mm-hmm.
To which every shareholder gets an annual report that explains their plan in detail. So it's just like a person, if you don't have a plan, I don't know what you're doing. What do you
Absolutely.
want? Seriously, Bill, what do you want to be? If you don't know what you be, then how are you going to be it? It's impossible. So every business really needs to, I think, especially in these days, they need to think long and hard about, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? And how are we going to be successful at it?
Absolutely. And, I think some other areas that we should touch on is that you could use it. You talked about shareholders and investors and things like that, but also if you're seeking financing, a lot of smaller businesses will be using business plans to try to get funding in general. And being clear in the plan and talking about the plan, and again, knowing the value proposition, all the things we're talking about is important. Especially if you're looking for a private investor, they might dig into it, or be looking more at the marketing and the value proposition as opposed to the financial side of things, because they might be more comfortable with risk. So there's lots of uses for business plans when you put them together. But the most important part, like you've been saying, is to create the plan, because it can be used across the board and it can create uniformity in your company, which is exactly what we're pretty much talking about here.
Well, the other thing is there's three reasons. You mentioned a couple of them, but you can do three things with a business plan. The first thing, and probably one of the more important things, is you can show it to the bank. Every business has a banking relationship. And somewhere along the line, that financial institution is going to want to know what's going on, because you may need to borrow some more money. I think you mentioned that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Secondly, if you want to raise money with investors, there's no way you're going to get any money from anybody without a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and what I said a couple of times here already, is the real value of the plan to me is so that the team, the whole company, knows what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what it means to them. Because if they don't know that, then you're not going to have a very productive group of employees. So again, I think the business plan can be a powerful motivator if it's done right.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right. So anything else that you think we should touch on about business plans that we haven't mentioned yet before we kind of get into the actionable plan or actionable steps?
Well, the second part of developing a business plan is implementation, control, and measurement. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what you need to do once you have your business plan put together, you need to develop, obviously, your budget out of that business plan. And then on a monthly basis, you need to compare what's actually happening to what you budgeted to happen. Okay. And that should go on, for the first 3 months of the new year. And then you should have a first quarter review. And the value of the first quarter review is that during that first quarter review, you should be looking at the milestones in your strategies to see where you are. And what's going to happen is some of those strategies will be on target, some will be ahead, and some will probably be behind. So it gives you an opportunity at the end of the first quarter to make some adjustments if necessary. And then you have your monthly, budget to actual comparisons for the next 3 months. And then you have the second quarter review where you do the same thing. And then you have your monthly reviews for the third quarter, and then you're into the third quarter. Now, most business plans have to be for more than a year. You're going to be in business for more than a year. So the average business plan, I think, for a small to medium-sized company is probably about 3 years. As companies get bigger, it's typically about 5 years. And depending upon what kind of a business you're in, so in other words, if you're Exxon and you're in the oil business, you need to be planning for about 15 to 20 years in advance. So I guess my point is that it's great to put the plan together, but then you have to monitor it very carefully. And the most important thing, Bill, is you have to have some trigger points for your contingency plans. In other words, that contingency plan section in the business plan is pretty important. Mm-hmm. So you should be tracking key performance indicators, or in other words, those actions that are going on in your business that will represent whether or not you're going to exceed your plan or whether or not you're going to miss the plan. So to me, both are extremely important. First of all, you got to put the plan together, and then you have to measure success against it.
Absolutely. And I completely agree with you. A plan is useless if you don't use it correctly. And, having that accountability of, the quarterly meetings, but also having everyone looking at the plan and operating off the same one, they can create accountability around what their specific division's supposed to do. So the sales, what numbers they're supposed to hit, they can make sure they're on track. So, using that plan to effectively is important as well. So
the other aspect of that, Bill,
mm-hmm.
is that you need to do a break-even analysis. That should be part of your business plan. What that means is you should have a break-even analysis for every month. Okay, so you start, with so much cash, you generate some cash, you spend money, and then you have some cash left. So why is that important? Because it's important. You got to make sure that you're going to have enough money to continue to fund the plan. So,
absolutely.
And in addition to that, if you do the proper kind of break-even analysis, it'll even reinforce more the value of controlling the plan in the first place.
Absolutely. And it paints a picture. So now you have measures to that success, and that helps you, especially when you're in the beginning of your businesses, or starting your business, being able to see that you are growing. Sometimes we get stuck so much in the business that when you're a smaller one, at least, that you start to see like, well, where am I growing? I don't think I'm growing. Well, if you look back at the plan and following it, like you said, you'll be able to measure that, and it keeps you moving forward, keeps you understanding that yes, things are moving forward, or in the reverse, understand that things are not moving where they're supposed to, and being able to make that assessment. And like you said, correcting it as needed as you move forward.
It's even more important for someone starting a new business, because what typically happens is everybody gets excited and spends more money than they should have. Mm-hmm. If you don't do the monthly break-even analysis for your first year of operations, you're going to have some unpleasant surprises. And I don't really care whether you're opening up a pizzeria or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Open up a pizzeria. Well, the first thing you should be asking in terms of what we've been talking about is, why is my pizzeria going to be better than all the pizzerias in the neighborhood?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first question, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And if you can't explain that to yourself, then I don't know what you're doing.
Absolutely.
So then the next question is, So we open, first of all, before you open the doors, you have to spend a certain amount of money, even in a pizzeria, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to get a space, you have to get the ovens, you have to get, everything that you need to open the doors to sell pizza, right?
Yep.
So then the question is, so how many pizzas do we have to sell to cover those expenses, right?
Absolutely.
And then you have monthly expenses, right? You have all your fixed expenses for the month. So if you haven't thought through the process, even if it's a simple business like a pizzeria, you're gonna get yourself in trouble. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely. And that's basically what you're doing with the business plan, keeping yourself moving forward. So what I want to do now is kind of go into some actionable steps for people creating a business plan. So what are the first couple things they should do when coming up with it?
Well, I think obviously the first thing that they should, even forget a business, just an individual, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that any business or any person should do is just to think about what we've been talking about here. What do you want to be? And most people have no idea what they want to be. All right.
Absolutely.
Or what you want to be, you can't be it.
Mm-hmm.
If you take that same simple little analogy and you bring it to the business side of things, okay? The question obviously is, what is, getting back, what is our vision? What do we want to be as a company, right?
Yep.
And then you have to then, if you decide that's what you want to be, then the second question, just getting back to the personal side of it, is, well, how are we going to be it?
Absolutely.
That's the second question. And then that then should lead to hopefully a thought process of creating a business plan, right? And if we get back to what I said at the beginning, the first step in that, you've really got to write down your vision, all right? You really have to, what is our unique value proposition?
Absolutely.
And if you got to do that. And then once you get that done, I think you have to look at the competition. I think you have to see what their unique value proposition is. Because what's the sense of starting a business? Hey, there's a lot of pizzerias, aren't there?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hate to tell you, the pizzeria business is very painful and you don't make a lot of money. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just take that as a simple example. If you're going to open a new pizzeria, so what's special about your pizzeria? Is, what's faster, better, or cheaper? So these are some basic questions, Bill, that I think anybody has to answer,
Absolutely. And I completely agree with you. So
why do they want our pizza? Why do they want our bananas? Why do they want our smartphone? How come Apple is so successful? Huh? There's over 1 billion Apple smartphone users.
that doesn't surprise me at all.
Now, that smartphone's been around for about 14 years now. So for those who are listening to this, they should be saying, well, how is Apple going to continue to survive and grow and prosper? Shouldn't they?
Absolutely.
So what do you think? So what do you think Apple does? Look, you're in the customer business. Everybody thinks they're selling a product. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You're really in the customer business. That's your business. So what you need to do is to figure out what's going on with our customers. How are they changing? What's happening? Something's happening every day, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Changing, the market's changing. So the business plan really is a living tool. That's the way I like to think about it. It's a living tool for keeping the management team focused on the most important aspect of their business, which is the customer. Okay?
Absolutely. And I think
So,
that kind of ties it all together nicely for us with, how we're supposed to use the business plan and what are the first things that we need to do. So with that being said, thank you so much for joining us for this video. And Robert, thank you for talking about the information and such. And I will see everybody in the networking event tonight at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time.